Welcome to Causing the Effect, a podcast focused on the exploration of your mind, body, and spirit.
What's going on, Al? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am doing great. I would say today, people, I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but I've been excited to talk to Al. Really, I would say science, medicine, yoga. She's like a Renaissance woman, teacher, author, advisor, scientist. I don't know how you got to where you are, and I'm interested about all of it, but like, where did the yoga start first when you went to India?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how I got to where I am either, which is the awesome part about life, to be honest. So I grew up doing martial arts. I'll start with that question.
Okay.
And my
Which martial art?
I did Taekwondo since I was like 5.
Cool.
And he left when I was 16 to study yoga and meditation. So I kind of had it in the back of my mind and got really into yoga when I was in college. And after college, I got really into it, which is kind of how I do things. And after college, I loved, science and studying and everything, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I decided I would go to India and sort of dive deep into the yoga. And I was there on and off for about 3.5 years.
And let me just state this, that, off the bat, if you don't know Ali's background, you think like, what is it? Some wacky spiritual gal. Were you studying like neuroscience or something?
Yes. So I did, my undergrad is in neuroscience. My PhD is in neuro and behavioral. And I am graduating from med school and going into surgery this spring.
So you really were like high levels of both. You went high level in science and then spirit. Like how was that in your formative years, like molding the two? Because for me, I was exposed to mostly like, bro science, working out, and then spirituality. And I'm like, okay, I have a basis, but you were doing like high level stuff at a young age.
Yeah, I guess, it didn't feel like that. It felt like I was just in college when I was in college and I was doing yoga and yoga teacher trainings. I think I had really awesome supportive parents. So they didn't really make big things. Like I didn't have to fit into a box. I could kind of do what really excited me. And it's interesting. I still walk that line, like I hang out with medicine, surgery, hard science, research people. And, I agree with them and I talk to them about certain things. And then I feel like I'm always having this other perspective that I want to bring up. And then whenever I'm on the other side, I feel like I have to represent and make sure we're integrating. And that's sort of where I've sort of come to peace with all of my experience, is just like, we just have to integrate. And I think that that's sort of the line I walk now.
And that's a fine line, because you're practicing yoga, meditation, and you're also, I believe, what was it? Epigenetics was like what you're focusing your dissertation on.
Yeah.
And that's coming back to the long-term, I believe it was about just tell me, but it was something to do with the mindfulness compared with PTSD people, but you'll say it better.
Yeah. So my PhD dissertation is on epigenetics. You're correct. And, which is kind of a hot topic in and of itself. And I look at, gene sequencing, but like RNA sequencing instead of DNA. And we look at changes to that in people who are recovering or have suffered or survived PTSD. So really it's looking at stress and then how those genes are implicated in things like wound healing and autoimmune disorders and inflammatory disorders and stress and hormones and all sorts of things. And that's been really awesome, just to kind of feel like there's scientific backing and interest to kind of say there's these big changes, and handling stress and dealing with stress has incredible implications for things that really, I think, like affect us daily and affect us as a society, and certainly as a world society, that I think is really important for healthcare. And it's wild. I spend right now finishing med school and I'm going into surgery. I'm in the middle of residency interviews. So I spend a lot of time in the hospital right now. And, it's hard not to see, like, yes, surgery for sure for some things, but a lot of people also have so many other things that are going on that I feel like we have other tools to help. And so I get really excited about those kind of things.
Yeah, you're really integrating on many levels. And for it's an interesting time that we're in, where like science is up here and now you're seeing science confirm the spiritual practices, the yoga, the mindfulness. Because I'm just the guy who's like, try it, see if it works. If like now I meditate every morning, hour and a half, and I'm like, I don't care why or what. this shit is great and I just feel better. And
Yeah.
just so you dummies if you don't know what epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and your environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. Now, from your perspective, what are the biggest factors that really affect the epigenetics of a human being?
Yeah. So my research, like all PhD research, is like really small. So I kind of have done this incredible deep dive into like I think the samples are somewhere around like 3,500 now at this point, people who we've had like blood samples of pre and post trauma. And so I'm looking at that. I'm just looking at, before and after. We've got like 9/11 first responders blood samples, war veterans. There's a whole bunch of databases. And I think stress is a really good place to start, because if you say stress has this huge implication, like yesterday I did this deep dive into my results, just kind of going through the genes and the markers and everything. And if stress is causing this very significant result in very important critical like proteins and genes, that kind of affects everything, right? Then we start to get into everything from your environment, what you're eating, what your life was like, education. I mean, obviously, injury or sickness and things like that can affect it. But I think if we're talking about the bigger picture, like stress and environment kind of encompass everything. And there's been incredible studies that have looked at that, showing, I think it's sort of become like a hot topic in the news too, like showing people being able to prove that, second generation are carrying the same epigenetic changes, like people who have struggled through famine or wars and things like that, their children are also still having these like same epigenetic changes, responding to stress and survival mechanisms. And that's incredible, right? I feel like we know that. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Like, so what you're saying is if your father or your mother have a stressful life, let's say, it does just get passed down to the kid. Even if the kid wasn't raised by the parents, there's still going to be that gene impression on the kid.
Yeah. And there's been a bunch of twin studies that have showed that, like twins that were separated at birth and they come back together, and some are really good, right? Like not all epigenetic changes are bad. And some of them are just really a result of the environment. Like I think a very famous study, one of like the first ones, was looking at grandchildren of people who had survived like Great Depression. And the grandchildren, even though they were, relatively healthy, they tended to be overweight because their bodies were literally programmed to like store food because their grandparents had gone through like a famine. And I think that that's like a simple way we can look at it. And then on a bigger way we can look at it is, we have this programming, we have this like innate programming. And what I love to say is it doesn't have to be bad. Like if these experiences can have such an important, very specific effect, then arguably the things we choose to do can also have an effect, right? That's why things like meditating every morning or yoga or walks in nature or reading, like habits have this profound impact on our bodies and our lives. And I think it's really important to start to talk about that, because I feel like as a society, sometimes we have this like get through everything mentality. Like, I'm going to get through this, I'm going to get through the holiday, got to get through work, got to get through the, all this kind of stuff. And everybody hits a breaking point. Sometimes the breaking point is bad. Quite often, like people have realizations that they're not happy or they're not living their purpose or whatever it is. And sometimes the realizations can come from a good place. Like you just decide it's New Year's and you want to do something better. And sometimes it can be a really influential person and, you know, something's missing. And sometimes you just need to have a better relationship with yourself. I'm the same way. Like I notice when I don't meditate, I'm like, this is not good.
Al, I'm a fucking animal. And I think it is where like a baseline, like some people just don't get stressed. Like I have a friend, he's just, dumbsy old, goes through the day, very simple, great. And you have me who, Al, I'll quickly tell you, I went, decided to be in the most stressful world, financial services, hedge funds in my 20s.
Yeah.
So again, these pain, and my baseline of stress, I don't deal with stress well. It's just the way it is at this point.
Yeah. Which is so interesting you would pick that.
Well, listen, we'll get to the whole thing here.
Okay.
But I ended up getting really bad ulcers when I was like 24.
Yeah.
So I go to the doctor and I'm like, listen, give me the pills or the drugs. I got to fix this. And thank God he wasn't like shoving. He was like, well, do you generally feel stressed? And he gave me like stress tests. He's like, you're really stressed. And then I
Yeah.
ended up going to my cousin who lived in Thailand for 10 years. He gave me a book called Mindfulness in Plain English. And
Yeah.
10 years later, here we are. But so that's
Mhm.
the stressful environment. And then as we go through my life and I learned throughout my 20s, my father was in the mafia. He went into
Mhm.
the witness protection program, disappeared when I was 6 years old. I had no idea what happened.
Wow.
I find this out last 2 years ago. It was during COVID from my grandfather, who I never met.
Wow.
My grandfather just got out of jail. I was like, this is all fucked up. Like, what
Yes.
story is this? So I get the whole. I sit down and
What movie is this? I think I
this
saw
is this is crazy. This
Yeah.
is gonna be. We're gonna have a movie about me. Ryan Gosling will play me. It'll be
Oh
great.
yeah.
But he tells me, your father put me in jail. So my father ratted on his father. Right? It's crazy. Isn't that a good? That's a good twist.
Oh, we got
Right
it.
at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to go. So but the point I'm trying to make here is like everybody's baseline is different, and just
Mhm.
becoming aware of that, I think, is important. So
Mhm.
people ask me, why do you have to wake up at 4 a.m.? Why are you doing your asana into your breath, into your pranayama, into your meditation? I go, so I'm gonna fucking murder you if I don't. That's really just the simpleness of it. But understanding what I like
Mhm.
to do on this show is bring on everybody from all
Yeah.
different walks of life to show there's not one path to do this. We all just want to be
No.
calm, relaxed, and feel like we're the shit. But the point is, you have to figure out the tools for yourself
Mhm.
to kind of figure it out. And I believe, what was it, Ashtanga yoga is what you
Yeah.
studied.
Yep.
Was that the thing that kind of got you hooked into spirituality and the yoga?
Oh gosh. I think yeah, I think being in India too, I just recently had an incredible conversation with a surgeon when I was at Hopkins a couple of weeks ago, and he studied and trained in India, but he's, an incredible surgeon here in the States. And it kind of reminded me the sort of beauty and the integration that being immersed in a place like that versus the US can have. The Ashtanga yoga practice I absolutely love. I love harder physical things, which I think Ashtanga has a reputation as being in terms of the yoga spectrum. But for me, it's also just having that intense priority to like take a look at yourself and really work through your things, which, like you're saying, you can do in a variety of ways. And I think the thing I loved about Ashtanga at the time is we got up really early. I still get up really early. So, we got up really early. We did the same practice every day, minus, one day a week when it was different. And then we would add one posture a day as you progressed. And the interesting thing about that, which I loved, was that you get this really good look at yourself because you're doing the same thing every day. So if you're doing the same thing every day in the same place with the same beautiful sort of like atmosphere, and you're just like a lunatic one day, that's really you, right? And that's really nice to be aware of, what are my patterns? How am I? How can I check in? How can I be a better person? You're saying like you get really frustrated or all these kind of things if you don't meditate into yoga. And like, I learned very quickly that I can be very hard on myself. Like my meditation practice taught me, and I still do it. I can't believe the things I say, like one little mistake, those kind of things. And that's great. Like I would never talk to my friends like that. So I think the practice for me is also about that. Like, just where are you? How are we going to do today? What's realistic? And yeah, I think that was probably like, of course, being in India for that long was definitely a pinnacle point. My parents also, like my mom is extremely spiritual, so she's always encouraged like meditation, and those kind of aspects of life. She's always been very in touch with that. So I think I was always sort of exposed very early, which is also helpful. I wanted to say one thing that you mentioned, which is a interesting thing that's come up a couple times. Sorry to be rambling.
No, go. Rock and roll.
Okay.
Rock and roll.
There's one thing about stress that I think is sometimes overlooked, that there's people that don't, like what you're saying, like I don't handle stress well, I get stressed out. And then there's people that don't. And one of the things that epigenetics and papers and things are also looking at is the stress response is very different for people. Like some people, like you're saying, like they get stressed out, they feel crazy, they're frustrated, they're all these kind of things because they're in a stressful environment. And that's one way to respond. It's sometimes more obvious. But there's also people, and they've done this study, that they don't respond. They're like, oh, my life is blowing up, or everything is crazy, or things that would stress somebody else out. And they're just kind of like, nah. And there's a lot looking at sort of why is that? And what's the downside of that? Like, what's the cost of that? And they started this study a long time ago with like mice, where they would stress them out, or like the moms were really stressed out. And they found like over and over again that people who had also struggled through a lot of, not people who had struggled through a lot of stress, in those stress tests, those evil like little stress tests where they like, make the mice like float in water and stuff, that the ones that were pre-exposed to a lot of stress actually didn't get stressed out. And there's a lot of research sort of looking at that, this kind of like freeze phenomenon they talk a lot about, or just, you're supposed to have alarm bells at some point, right? And what's the cost of that? And there's some studies looking at now, like, is there a physiological cost if somebody grows up in these horrible, stressful environments or has suffered through a lot of trauma and they're not really like a stressed out adult? Are there physiological things that, blood pressure that we're not noticing? And in the lab that I work with, that's a question that comes up a lot. Like, what is this cost and where is it going, right? Like if you're able to not feel stressed, maybe it's going somewhere else, which is really interesting and I think really valuable. And I'm not saying, if you're someone that's just never stressed, start worrying about all these things, but I think it just shows that there's still value in being more in touch with yourself. It can change things like how you eat. Maybe you notice different health things, but I think as humans, we probably do have a cost. I don't know if you read The Body Holds the Score, but I think that kind of addressed some stuff.
No,
it's an amazing book about trauma. And really that, like your body is going to, in some fashion, hold whatever you're going through. So maybe
I gotta put this in the. I gotta put.
Yeah, you gotta look it up.
No, I have a rule here. You didn't know. I don't tell anybody. Anytime you bring up a book, I gotta buy it. So.
Oh no, you have to buy this. It's amazing.
Perfect. Yeah. If you saw how many books I got for I put it on my Christmas list, so my mom got it for me. But now this year I gotta wait. But I got 40 books to read, so I'm ready to go.
I want that one at the top.
Yeah, I got you. I'm sorry to cut you off though, but keep going.
No. And I think that's really valuable. Like sometimes people are cruising through and they'll be like, oh my God, I was feeling great. And then all of a sudden I'm in pain, or all of a sudden I can't sleep, or all of a sudden, all these things. And I think for me, I'm like, it probably wasn't all of a sudden, right? And I just think it's important to also look at that, like just being anxious and feeling like psychologically stressed isn't the only response to stress that we go through as humans.
Yeah, and even from I guess from a science level, the energy never really dissipates, right? It always just turns into something else. So from that, like, because this is, I hate being me, because it's like you see everything. It's so great. Like I have a good bullshit. I'm like, yeah, motherfucker, but I gotta see everything then. Like I hate this. But so everything has its pros and cons, and that's why I loved when I first dove into meditation. The first 5 years, I was loving it. This spiritual shit was great, and now you're in the middle ground, and shout out to Hector Marcel, the president of 3 Jewels over he's they run a Tibetan Buddhism nonprofit. He told this is where people usually quit, because at this point, when you're able to see everything and you're aware, but you can't quite change anything yet. That's where I'm at. So it's like, okay, I see it, but I can't quite. And I think this is the make or break for some of us. But like from your perspective, as far as this stress, since we're talking about stress, just there's general stress. Yeah. Then add social media. Add what a kid's brain's going through during that. If I had social media, I would have been crying every day. I'm a very emotional person.
I can't imagine being a teenager with social media. I can't.
Is there going to be some sort of evolution of stress? Because I think if you look back and kind of bring it from an evolutionary standpoint, we needed stress to survive. So I probably would have made it great back then, because I wouldn't have got eaten by a lion. But eventually, I feel like if everybody keeps getting stressed out, and I'm saying more of there's a general stress going on, particularly in New York. People are angry. I'm ready to smack somebody on the train. It's just how it is. What does this look like years from now?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I feel like I could ask you. You're talking to like all these people. To me, everybody's stressed out. I think that's a human condition. Like you're saying, we can look back in time and be like, oh, this is actually the best time to be alive. Like we have antibiotics, we have running water, like all these kind of things. And so we're stressed about new, completely heart-wrenching, very like new stresses, right? Like social media as a teenager is a great one. Social media as an adult. I don't know what it looks like. To me, I don't like social media. I don't like
I know. I was trying to find you, Al. Very difficult.
I'm not very good at it. I don't like it. I don't love the screen thing, the comparison thing. I feel like there's so many things that come up that are we're just not doing great. And it's a lot of energy that goes into this now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the answer. To me, like for me personally, the answer is just like meeting people at the human level again, which we lose, right? If we're all in our phones and we're all on our way to the next thing to do. And it's easy to do in all areas of life. So to me, it's always like, what's the unifying human experience? And I just love that. Like it can be the smallest conversation with people, and I still have this ability to like marvel at it. I'm like, oh my God, the sunrise again, you guys, like, did everybody see it? Are we so excited? I don't know if that's what we get back to. The problem with humans is we're never really good at making positive change without big things to like shake it, which is very scary. There is amazing things happening, I think, in general, but I definitely feel that the last couple of years and the kind of crises that are going on, given all the technology we have and all the advancements we have and all this ability to do really good, it's hard. Humans we're difficult. It's like it's a difficult group to manage. To me, it's all about like the human experience and finding that. I grew up traveling a lot. So like India wasn't the first time I'd lived abroad. And to me, my favorite part about that is you can do like the most radically different things. And there's always these completely human things that go on everywhere. Like everyone's worried and loves their children. Everybody thinks puppies are adorable. Everybody loves beautiful nature things, like whether or not you want to be someone camping in it or just enjoying it. We all have this ability to like want to know ourselves. We all smile and laugh and all these kind of things. And I feel like that's sort of where it's at all the time, no matter what. Like if I'm teaching, which I used to do, or if I like lecturing, or if I'm teaching yoga, or even if I'm in a hospital and I have no idea what time it is because I've like lost track, I still feel kind of the same. Like there's still just people with questions and self-awareness to some level, and they want, like we all have these same desires as human, and I feel like that's amazing. Like the more we can get back to that, I get, I'm like, this is hopeful.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. For me, I got my New Year's resolution was trying to go off social media, but that's the issue with trying to be an influencer or you have to have it. But just I've been off of it, just like fuck it, and I'm like, wow, it just feels like I have to learn stuff the hard way. It's just like what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Or
the experimental way. That's a good way.
Experiment, even say you can tell how I talk to myself out. It's very, very, very tough. But the not keeping yourself busy where you're like just being productive.
Yeah.
Like I got off the train a little bit at the end of the year there with the meditating, and like this, since it's the 6th we're recording this, so next week you guys will hear it. But like just waking up early is like a victory in itself.
Yeah.
And then when you do everything, like I'm curious to know what your but I stick to the 8 limbs, or the general 8 limbs of yoga, where you start with posturing in the morning. I would say that's more my light yoga. It's my pranayama, it's my meditation. So, then I'm going to the gym for 2 hours, we're banging it away, and then come home and do some real, because your style of yoga, that's a vinyasa flow or a type of vinyasa.
Yeah.
So, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's vinyasa flow. It takes like hour and a half. There was a point in my life before med school that I taught at NYU. So I was teaching like 9-10 o'clock a.m. classes, and I used to get up like 4. I would do my own practice, like full Ashtanga practice, meditate like 20 minutes. And then I would teach yoga, and then I would run back home, and then I would go to work. And then after work, I'd go for like a run for 45 minutes. And that is like my happy space. So that's like 3 hours, right? Now it looks very different. I just got off of like 5 or 6 months of orthopedic surgery rotations at different hospitals, which looks like 14 to like 17-hour days with like 3 to 4 days off a month. And that was wild, because I went from being this person that like I'm good at a baseline of like 2 to 3 hours of those kind of things. And it shrunk down, and I started to talk a lot about, really leveling with people who don't have the time that I used to have. And I used to be like, you can make time no matter what, until, I'd be leaving the hospital and would have to have slept, eaten, and come back in like 8 hours.
Mm.
And this idea that people don't have the time, whether it's self-imposed and they could make the time, but like for whatever reason, they don't have it now. And I started to really appreciate what like 5 minutes can do. And I started to talk about that all the time, like on podcasts and some writing, just because that's like what I had, you know, because you can't not sleep for more than a couple nights in a row. And so I feel like my ideal exercise, meditation, yoga practice is about 3 hours a day. And I also find incredible value in 5 minutes. And I also see the impact of like not making even that amount of time, which is often a baseline for a lot of people. Like they do not give themselves 5 minutes to check in without like distraction or something, or an activity or a phone or things like that. So I'm a huge fan of that too. Like, do you have 2 minutes? Do you have 5 minutes? Do you have 3 hours? Like anything, I'll take anything.
And that's the thing with like life will get in the way. So you can't, like, I used to be so hard on myself. You didn't get your 5 hours of self-help, and at 4 a.m. it's like, bitch, how are you going to do that? Like every day? It's impossible.
Yes.
So I think understanding that like it's going to happen, just be a little, there's this fine line between like being disciplined and being rigid. Cause you don't want to lose the flow. Like, cause I'm a pretty flowy guy, but like when I'm getting too disciplined, I need to still be like a kid and like, and just be like, you know, just have a good time with stuff. Cause when you start like looking your life, like checking off a box, you lose that sense. Cause I started having, when I started really getting to reading and like insights, I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And then the second you start looking for the insight, you don't get the insight. And I was like, okay, so you got to like, it's almost like dancing in a way where it's like, you just got to do it just to do it. And that's really what that approach I've taken like this week. We're 6 days in and it feels like it's back to normal.
Yeah.
But now like nowadays you have your big interview tomorrow. Mount Sinai, all this good stuff. Like, how much has the science and the medicine side affected the spiritual side, or do you really? Because you just seem to kind of be sort of very integrated at this point.
Yeah, I feel integrated, and I feel like people are used to me. I don't come into the OR being like, man, this person probably doesn't need surgery. They just need a hug. Like, I don't think that either. So I feel integrated myself. I love science. I love surgery. I love medicine. I think it's incredible. I also think there's a lot of room for improvement. Particularly like the medicine side. I think in terms of like health crisis, it's really hard in the States and in the hospitals not to look at a lot of ailments and be like, we can be doing better. Like, exercise, diet, stress, a lot of these kind of things. And so I sit on that side for those conversations a lot. Like, I don't eat meat. I've never eaten meat. I think my friends will call me like a health fanatic, you know, but I also like to enjoy myself. So I try not to be, like you're saying, too rigid when it's important. I feel like, you know, to tie in the epigenetics thing, that's kind of what it's about, right? Like, your body, like you kind of do whatever you've been doing, you know? And I think we see that as adults. It's like, I still love to do this thing because this is how we did it when I was a kid. And this is what feels like home and normal and natural. And we do that with ourselves. And as adults, we have to do that, right? Like, if you meditate every day, you know, and you have friends in town or something you really want to do, or, you know, whatever, and you miss a day, like, there's no big deal. Like, your baseline is that you're going to meditate. You're a person that's aware. You're going to check in with yourself. The problem is when that's not a habit and you don't have like a natural pull to that. So you kind of just get derailed and do something else. And I don't know, when I talk about these things in medicine, and like with the surgeons I work with and things like that, like, they're all in agreement. Like, we want healthier people. We want happier people. Like, people are generally aware that, yeah, like if they meditated for 5 minutes, and there's all these podcasts now on like neuroscience and all these things that are really addressing it. Like, I feel like everyone's in agreement. It's just now we kind of have to rewire people in general and communities and culture to be like, this is so important. And you do it every day until it feels like brushing your teeth. And then you can kind of let yourself go a little bit so that you can not be rigid. But reprogramming those things is hard.
Believe me, I'm an Italian kid from Brooklyn. Al, trust me, my mother thinks I lost my mind. She's like, what are you doing? What is meditating? But I think there's like if you look at it where it was 10 years ago, there's obviously more people talking about it. And the way I look at this space is like all the podcasters, everybody in this world is just in this together to just raise the like I did have a Joe Rogan's and a pop up out of this. You have your Jay Shetty's. The key is to like for all of us to just raise the awareness for everybody's like, oh, okay. What do you like? I had to trick my little cousins because I can't tell them it's meditating. I said, wake up and just breathe for 10 minutes. Yeah. And they were like, wow, I feel so good. I'm like, yeah, you dummy. It's
I know. But isn't it wild? Yeah.
It's weird. Well, because they get on the phone the second, and I even, that's when I'm in my ruts is when you wake up and go right to the phone because you're looking, you're to be inflicted by an emotion that'll connect to a thought, and then you're back in the loop. And I told them, listen, just wake up, do me a favor, stay off the phone for 10 minutes and just breathe. Sit with your breath. I had to pay them. I had to pay them $50 for a week, and they had to check in with me and do the whole thing. And I knew they really did it because they were so happy. They're like, this is incredible. I was like, man, this is it.
And that's the thing is I feel like if you're realistic about it, like as practitioners and people that are kind of trying to do that, I mean, you're doing all this because you want people to be happier and healthier, and we're sort of like scared of what the things are going on. But like, when you make reasonable requests from people and you see the results, it's incredible. And, right now I'm rolling out a new study that I kind of wrote for, it's a non-operative scoliosis patients, like teenagers and kids. So like 13 and up. And it's yoga versus like physical therapy for these patients. And when I first approached the surgeons for it, and like I'm in the South doing this, and everybody was like, is everybody going to tell you no and think you're crazy? And they were all so excited. Like the feedback was, oh, awesome. We don't have a lot of things to deal with pain and depression and body image and all these kind of things for these patients. And, there's an opiate crisis. Like we need more things. So even if the yoga was good enough as PT, like even if it was the same, or they felt happier, or they could handle what's going on for the duration of like their growth period, it would be incredible. And everybody was asking me, like, are you worried? They still ask, like, are you worried it's not going to work? And I'm like,
this was in Alabama?
Yeah, this is in Alabama. There's an incredible children's hospital. UAB is an amazing institution. And like the orthopedic surgeons there are great. They're like, yeah, let's totally do this. So we're rolling out the study, and I get all this feedback, especially from the yoga side. Interestingly enough, they're like, do the surgeons hate it? Is everybody, did you have to really like push for this? And I'm like, no, there's been enough studies. Everyone's excited. Like they want tools. People want tools, especially for these kind of holes where there are tools to use and medicine isn't always like the complete answer. And everyone asks me all the time, are you worried it's not going to work? And I always say, I worry about everything. Like I can tell you all the things to worry about today. Like I'm a big overthinker, and I don't ever worry about it because I'm not trying to fix, in scoliosis, the curve. I'm not trying to fix the curve. I'm just trying to make their life a little bit better so that they don't have to look at pain medication as much or at all. They don't have to be depressed, or maybe they can be less depressed and have more confidence in whatever it is. And I'm just like, I know that this is going to be awesome. And I know this is going to be at least good for them. And so it's so exciting to me, right? And I feel like that's mostly the feedback that I get, walking kind of this like line between things, but it's awesome. It's very exciting.
How did you, because I feel like I developed this sensor of like, what's too much past the line? Like, all right, you can manifest your reality. Okay, your thoughts, your reality. You got me there. Okay, my thoughts are my reality. And then it's like, well, I can manifest it. And then you go past that line. I'm like, all right, I'm out. Like, how did you figure out my sense is pretty good now. I think it's just the reps from here. Cause I've spoken to some, I had some wackos on this.
Yeah.
So one dude was literally telling me I'm going to pay him $1,000 and he's going to change my trauma from over the thing. One of those wackos.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, you're past the line. This is all I do now when I'm dealing in this world. I'm like, all right, which line are you on? Okay. So this may work. And there is like too much, like I'm sure you have some people in the spiritual world that are just like, you don't need medicine. I'm just going to heal it.
Oh my God. I have so much of that. Yeah. I mean, we went through a pandemic, right? And I'm on the medicine side, and, and people have strong opinions without a lot of scientific backing. So what's my line?
Well, then, where like how did you develop the sensors of like because the science backing of things, you understand this from a yoga perspective, like what was that you have a course up, it's like the deeper understanding of the physiological benefits of yoga or something, like your shit, like how did you develop that and then get more into that course, because that sounded interesting.
Totally. Okay. So, yeah, I think walking this line, like as we're talking about, like I go to the yoga world and everyone's got an answer for everything. And I go to the other world, and usually my experience has actually been that the other world is much more open than the sort of alternative health thinks. They're just more inundated, and you have to do things because of laws and all these kind of things. So it feels more like that side is desperate, like not desperate, but they're like, yeah, if you've got something that helps and time and resources, then we're open. But when I was doing a lot of yoga, and I used to teach at Ashtanga Yoga New York in Soho with Eddie Stern, and he and I would talk about this all the time, that like the yoga is awesome and the incredible yoga postures that we can do is great, but that's not the point. Like, to me, it's not the point. You take somebody who has huge physical ailments or a trauma or whatever it is, and the fact that they can get up and do it, it's absolutely incredible. And the goal is not to put your leg behind your head, even though we were, all doing that every morning. And it wasn't, you don't want to injure yourself, and you want to get in better shape, and you want to feel good and all these kind of things. But like the goal was not that. Like the magic was happening somewhere else, because, like we're talking about meditation, self-awareness, yoga, all these kind of things, exercise in general, like changes you. And I just felt like that was just this, thing I was standing on. Like, this is my thing. Like, I love being able to do the yoga. We all have goals for it, but like, that is not the goal here. And I was teaching genetics and like bio courses and physiology and stuff at NYU. And so to me, my life just made it so that was together. Like, I was like, oh, this makes sense. I teach yoga in the morning, and then I teach science, and I feel like I'm teaching the same thing. So every day felt like that. It was just like this natural thing. And NYU is developing more and more of their online courses on Coursera for credit, for not credit. And the opportunity came up, and I kind of just pitched it. I was like, I want to write like a physiology course that can be taken by kind of everybody, but also does like all the yoga and the scientific sort of backing of that. So it's a series of lectures on different physiological systems, simplified so that it's digestible. There's talk of doing like an expanded version, and then yoga videos to go with that physiological system. So like, for cardiac, it's all cardiac physiology, and then a yoga class. And then there's some interviews. So there's a neurosurgeon, Eric Ander, who actually participated in the yoga classes for some of them. He gives an interview. Orthopedic surgeon gives an interview. My dad actually is the orthopedic surgeon that gave the interview. A physical therapist gave an interview, and my epigenetic PI gave a wonderful interview about epigenetics. So it's this awesome kind of passion project, honestly, that got, it actually circulated a lot. And I think, 50,000-60,000 people have taken it, which is incredible. But yeah, like that was my big integration passion project. And that's kind of developed into the studies where people are open to letting me do back pain trials and scoliosis trials and things that, excite me in terms of that front. And to answer the other question in terms of like, how do I do it? What's the feedback? Those kind of things. And you were saying, like your experience, I remember when we were really like, when I was really into the yoga and everything, my dad's an orthopedic surgeon, and like all of us, whenever we would get injured, which happens in yoga, like it happens in running or all these things, we would like go to him and we'd be like, my knee hurts when I like do this crazy twist, or when I put it behind my head. And he would be like, why don't you just not do that? Why don't you just not do these things that hurt and kind of dial that back just over and over again? And at the time, I didn't have as much appreciation because that was so important, And now I have like, having seen more in medicine, I feel like I have a much like softer approach to what's important physically to do, and such a greater appreciation for, like you were talking about, sort of the mental clarity and a knowledge of yourself and those kind of things that are so, so valuable.
So dad's the orthopedic and mom was the spiritual gal. So that's how you got so integrated. It was it's in the genes. It's epigenetics.
Yeah, totally. And I'm an only child. So it's just like, I have to be this combo. And sometimes it's exhausting. Like sometimes I'm like, I just want to wake up and it's just surgery or nothing. But then I end up being the one talking to patients about life. Right. And I was going to say that too, the medicine side is not just people wanting, medicine, surgery, and everyone's okay. It's also hospitals are a land full of people that are taking very deep, reflective looks at their lives and their loved ones. I mean, some people are having incredible outcomes and some people are having the worst days of their lives all in one building. And that's a very spiritual experience if you look at it like that, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. That's an interesting way to look at it, that there's
Yeah.
literally like great case scenarios and worst case scenarios happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess people just, you kind of take healthcare for granted because everybody's like, oh, it's just they're just trying to get you. Like, I understand that, and I do see how maybe these big companies or whoever it is takes advantage of people that are really altruistic. But I don't think there's a teachers and healthcare workers. Those are like the two. They just want to help, and in
Yeah,
their
that's
own little ways.
definitely like that's my experience. I mean, there's always one person, but there's one person, a handful of people everywhere that you can find that on the spiritual side too. But by and large, the crisis in healthcare, to me, I don't understand the bigger stuff, pharmacy and insurance and all these kind of things. But the workers, they're doing incredible things. Like sometimes you want to have like perspective, have a conversation with like a pediatric oncologist, right? Which I'm sure you've seen quotes by them kind of go by, or a lot of physicians write books, incredible books. When Breath Becomes Air. I don't know if you've read that. Write that one down.
I need some, trust me. And this is what I'm learning, Al, that, a lot of these, the new age shit is a lot of bullshit. I'm learning, I had to learn like how to defer, like, because I just get hung up on stuff. Wait, which book is this?
When Breath Becomes Air. That one you can read in like 2 days. It's life-changing.
Paul Colantini?
Yes.
Got it.
And so there's a lot on that side, right? And I feel like I'm here to report that the physicians coming out with these incredible books, When Breath Becomes Air, Complications, all this kind of stuff. And also the other side is just, it's amazing. And, to come back to that kind of human experience, probably because I've had so many different experiences and, deep dives into different things, like the human experience is everywhere. And I think that that's something that we can all do better. Like the sunrises are so amazing for people that can't get motivated to get up early. Like you should try, like those kind of lost moments. I feel like as a society, I don't know, it's like that to me, that's like everything. And I think that that's really valuable to kind of start to look at that.
Yeah. And I think if people are like, what are these wackos talking about here with nature? If you're not a nature person, I think it's innately in you. You just gotta, like, I was not a nature person, and now I live by the water.
You're a city guy.
I'm a city guy. I was not aware of it, and now you every weekend you're hiking. You're doing like, I love. My favorite days go walk by the water over here, and then at night looking in the stars. And there's just something about it. You just sit and just like, wow, like this is unbelievable.
Can you believe that the sky, and you go all over the world and it's like this incredible sky. Like people think I'm crazy. The medicine people think I'm nuts because I'm just like, oh my God, I know it's so early, but did everybody see the sunrise when we were walking across the hospital? Like, and they're like, no, because we're tired. And I'm like, you should. We're all going right now to go look at it. And it's incredible. And you might be a person that doesn't want to actually go in the woods or bugs or all these kind of things, but there is ways to really appreciate that, which I feel like we kind of have to do, at some point, whether you're in a city or, there are places to kind of take that in if you find that valuable. For me, that's sort of what I need. Like if I find that I'm not like appreciating those things, the weeks are hard. Like it's not good.
Yeah, it sounds like you really have a good perspective on being grounded, like in what you like. You appreciate what you appreciate, and it's like you're not like trying to be the best orthopedic. You want some stars and fucking sun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's definitely who I am. And I struggle the most. Like I just did before up till Christmas, I did like 16 days of 4:30 a.m. starts in a row. And at the end, I was like, I'm ungrounded. And I know I'm ungrounded because I've had this practice before that's, like I'm well aware. And then I know I'm even more because I start texting my friends, like just so everybody knows, like I also can be like a total lunatic. Like I have these tools and I'm grateful for it. And I've had a lot of experiences, but I'll start texting my friends in the middle of like surgery, residency, interviews. And I'm like, do you think I wasted my whole life and everything's crazy? And I'm just like, no idea what I'm doing. And then I know the friends I could say that to.
Yeah.
And I know that that's, a wild idea, but it's just, there's too much going on. And so I do the same thing. I'm like, is everything just lost? And, and I think that that's important that everybody knows that like, we're all having some sort of, human experience. We don't get to escape it. There is no amount of meditation that's going to solve it. Like, unless you probably like stay in some, beautiful bubble or something like that, but that's not where life is, right? That's not where connection is.
Yeah, I was that was me during COVID. I had the best time of my life, COVID. I sat here, I meditated 3 hours a day. I thought I was gonna be a fucking Gandhi by the end of this thing.
Yeah.
And then life comes and I'm like, oh, you gotta talk to people and then you gotta do all this stuff. And you start realizing, like, okay, if you have to go to sit on top of a mountain for 3 hours, like, are you really gonna live life? Like,
right.
I'm sure some people do that. 1% of the monks and all that. God bless your soul.
Totally.
But like, yeah,
well, that's like the joke, right? That's the joke, is like everyone is enlightened when they're like on a beach in a cave meditating, but like what happens when you show up to your family for Thanksgiving, right? If you actually go back into it, how are we doing? And that's the real work though, too, right? That's most of us don't have the ability or don't want to completely detach. It's a very small percentage of people that live that, completely separate life. And I feel like that is the quest, right? Like, I want to be self-aware, I want to do good, but I also want to have perspective and give people grace under like stressful circumstances, right?
Mm-hmm. Now because everything we're talking about, it's spiritual, it's mindful, like, but it's very grounded in a way. Like,
let's talk about the crazy stuff.
Yeah, let's get to a little crazy stuff with
Okay.
you, like transcendence, like trying to, I don't know, like anything that starts moving away from the grounded stuff. Give me like a little wacky woo-woo stuff of what you're feeling or what you're thinking, because like it's everything you're saying.
What kind of
I don't know.
crazy?
Like, I guess from your practices.
Yeah.
Like, not even, it's because it's not wacky, like readings of like Eastern philosophy, Eastern religion. Like, do you take more, like, if you had to put yourself, are you like, what religion are you? Give me some of this stuff. Like,
yeah, let's do all that stuff. Yeah. So I'm Jewish, and
I couldn't tell, Al Seidenstein.
Yeah, science is like, it gave it away.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish. I think I would qualify as kind of like your classic sort of cultural reformed Jewish New Yorker. Nobody in my family is particularly religious, but we like acknowledge the holidays. And I've always been exposed to a lot of religions, a lot of diverse cultures and people, which I think is amazing. And for me, which I think is just how I'm programmed, I always find incredible similarities in everything. So we're kind of, as humans, especially right now, very wired to like look at differences. And then you start to, some of the stories are the same. I always found that really interesting. And so I think like in terms of Eastern philosophy, I feel like that's kind of what I go to kind of keep me grounded. I love a lot of like the perspective things, but I love the perspective and the stories. And I think it's really important to have something that you can believe in that's more than just this. Because if it's just this, I don't know, that's hard. That's hard, I think, to hold and stay motivated and find purpose in. So I feel like that's really valuable, but I don't follow a specific religion. And I think in terms of like books and like reading and like things, I love people that just have really like shared their life, like these books I'm saying, like When Breath Becomes Air, Complications, like Shantaram. I don't know if people have read that. Just these, like, you are fully experiencing all the parts of life. And I feel like there's a lot of different parts and jobs and circumstances that make us aware of that, and people too, right? And I think that that's the experience that everybody wants, right? Good or bad. And it's again, like, how do we like give each other grace during the bad parts, and how do we like soak up everything about the good parts, and then also do the human things along the way. Yeah.
That's pretty grounded to me too, Al. That's okay. A good way to look at it. No, I like
my
that.
friends are all like, she stresses all the time and she doesn't sleep, so.
You? You don't sleep?
Sleeping's hard. So sometimes I get in a good rhythm of it. Sleeping's very hard. Eddie Stern, who still teaches yoga in New York, and he used to tell me that I was the worst at Shavasana, which is like the end of your practice, and you get to lay down and like half the room falls asleep and they get pillows and all that kind of stuff. And I would like close my eyes for like 10 seconds and like get up and be ready to go. And it's always, like it's been hard. I sleep now because I'm on like a little bit of a break. And I don't know, like being tired is really hard for me. I just don't like it. When I was here for a rotation, it was the most tired I've ever been, which is saying a lot. And I had been on like, I don't know, like 40 something days, like 3 days off, like 16-hour days. And I started to fantasize about like being home and organizing all my drawers. Like that was what's getting me through the day. And I just like wanted to clean everything out and like organize everything. And I got home and I was like, I'm worried I might never have energy again. Which is wild because I should know that you can like sleep and recover, but it was like, one of those things. And I did sleep, and in 2 days I felt all better and was like on the trails running around again. But like resting and being pushed to your limits and feeling like you'll recover is definitely like a part for me that I hate not having energy. I hate being injured, those kind of things.
So the resting and recovery part, I kind of expected that. That's always the hard part for the type A's. So
am I type A? No, I'm just kidding. So that's hard. That's been something too. Like if we want to talk about like the nitty gritty, like I had back surgery my first year of med school, and that was awful. Like because I thought I could heal it and did everything like yoga, meditation, work through the pain. Like I grew up with a martial arts background. So I was like, this is no problem. We're going to work through it.
What happened with the back?
Ended up with surgery. And that was interesting because then I had all these limits because I was like really scared of hurting myself again. And then it was hard to like relearn when it's okay to push yourself. That was actually the hardest challenge for me because I just didn't want to be in such pain. And then I still wanted to be in shape. So, those are like my own struggles.
How bad was the surgery?
It was just the disc, like a slip disc, but it was big. So it was like a really big one. I tried to avoid the surgery, of course, which was so funny because I'm like in medical school to be a surgeon. I didn't want surgery. But I had like the numbness down my leg, and it was like, but I will say this, and I talk about this a lot, like in papers and things. It changed how I look at patients. Like I'm so grateful for that experience now because I used to have this, like, you kind of work through pain or it's like all in your mind, and, pain loops in your mind is real. Stress, exacerbating pain is real, but pain is so hard to deal with. And like now when I see patients who are in chronic pain, it's like, I feel for them at a different level. I approach it differently than I might have before. And I think that's, it's invaluable. It's like one of those hard things of life where I wish it didn't happen. And now I'm just like, oh, I don't, and I'm going into orthopedic surgery. So like a lot of people have pain. And I totally approach it differently now.
That's really interesting. I'm sure like you going through that just makes you a better surgeon.
I hope so. We'll see.
I think so. But Al, this was so much fun. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for just it's like a ball of fun with you. Oh my God, this was so great. And everybody, I'm gonna put the link if you want to connect with Al if you have any questions. And is that course free? The Coursera course?
That course is free. Yeah, I think you can pay to have credit if you need it for something. It qualifies, but it is free and available. And you can have my website and email if anybody has questions, but it's been awesome. I hope you enjoy the books. Let me know if you like them.
Oh, of course. Al, you're gonna come on again for sure. If you want. Yeah. I mean, I know I crushed it. It's fine. YouTube, like, review, subscribe for people listening. Thank you guys so much for the growth over the last 2 years. I appreciate it. I love y'all. As always, stay safe, stay positive, stay blessed. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.